Okay, hello, greetings, and welcome everyone. Alright, so I had a request for and questions about Buddhism and the relationship to Hermetics and the differences and so forth. So it's a pretty broad question. I look at Buddhism as the last door in Hermetics. So a lot of Buddhists try and get a sense of, oh no, we're Buddhist and Hindu is Hindu and everything else is everything else, and they try to form an identity of ownership of Nibbana. Anything that's universal and true, if it exists within truth, then it's the property of any system that's seeking that truth and developing a path to it. So Dharma, or universal laws, are what they are, and it's just different doctrinal views of those universal laws and how they function. Now, to go to the heart of Buddhism, Nibbana is the release of attachment, aversion, and delusion. So this path is the path of release. That's Buddhism. So if we look at the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, the precepts, the meditation objects, everything in Buddhism is a means to cultivating the release of attachment, aversions, and delusions. So if we look at release as the process of Buddhism, and exactly what the effects of Buddhism are, is to be released and let go, you need to take every concept, every idea, and analyze and go, how does this concept or how does this idea generate release? What is its relationship to release? If you can't find that relationship, you need to look deeper. So if, let's say, we look at a basic concept of concentration. You choose a meditation object, you concentrate your mind on it. Now, there's an automatic byproduct of stillness. Your mind becomes still when you become one-pointed. That stillness generates a potential for release. Now, just the simple act of moving from a state of concentration that contains static to a state of concentration that's still means there's a letting go that takes place. Any form of increased concentration has an increase of akasha, emptiness underneath it, which means that there's a neutrality or an emptiness that has been forming under the concentrated mind, which is the vehicle for release. So it's what controls the release mechanisms. So we're always looking at every Buddhist concept, every Buddhist idea as a way of cultivating release. So if you look at precepts, why does not taking intoxicants help you release? Well, obviously the mind is grounded, centered, and is able to concentrate. One's ethics are in place when one is sober. One doesn't have much ethics when one is drunk. Morality falls away. All these things dissolve and disappear that are required aspects of concentration and release. So one might at first glance go, oh, but I feel so relaxed and I'll let go of tension when you drink alcohol. But it's a form of slavery to a mind state. It's not a form of mastery of the mind state. So people essentially become slaves to alcohol to feel relaxed, rather than producing that phenomena of their own accord. So as you develop an understanding of how each concept, each idea, each precept, each meditation technique, each lifestyle change functions, it should always be understood within the context and the plan of how this generates release. And then once you have that concept of releasing attachments, releasing aversions, and delusions falling away, then you start to understand the fabric of Buddhism, what it ultimately represents. And the Buddhism centered most of what he taught around the Eightfold Path. But remember that there are many people who attain Nibbana being around the Buddha without having learnt the Eightfold Path. So you're not dependent upon very, very specific Buddhist teachings or any one way is the right way. in learning Buddhism, but it's more about the light of Buddhism and how it generates a release. Now, highly intuitive people, highly empathic people, will tune into Buddha's light when they do the morning service. If you watch a group of monks doing the morning service, they start radiating light. If you tune into the light rather than the words of the sutra they're chanting, you automatically notice that the mind becomes more mindful, the feelings become more released, and perception changes. The reason why they do the service before the meditation is it creates Buddha's light for you to ride in meditation. It's a vehicle for which to practice Buddhism and practice release. So Buddha's light is essentially a type of solvent that releases the mind, releases the feelings, and releases the body for the ascension process to function. So everything in Buddhism is ultimately designed to give you greater states of release. If you're not experiencing a sense of freedom and release from the way you're practicing Buddhism, it essentially means you're doing something wrong. You should always be feeling a byproduct of I feel more liberated, my mind is more free, my feelings more free, I'm unbinding in the process of practicing. If you mind map the fundamental teachings of Buddhism, let's say you write down 40, 50 fundamental concepts on a map on the wall, and in the middle you write the word release. And as we know, release is the center of achieving Nibbana. So you connect every concept, every practice, every word to the word release, and you start to see how it actually functions in truth. So what we're really looking at is, in the Hermetic view of it, the universe is mind. And the mind perceives thought forms, it perceives emotions, it perceives physical forms, it perceives all these layers of reality, and the mind has to release its attachment to these things first before the mind can release its attachment to itself, to the identity of I am mind, this individualized mind rather than universal mind. So there's these layers we work from form that work up the vibrational scale through the emotional, through the mind substance layers, all the way up into the layers of akasha, or the inherent emptiness underneath form, and how releasing on these different levels creates an awareness that the universe is ultimately mind substance, and that when you release attachment to the lower aspect of that mind substance and form, you move into the formless. A Hermetic view of release is first moving from the physical release to the astral release of time. When you start releasing, slowing down time, your physical body not only relaxes, but your stickiness to emotions also relax. When you are getting results with that, then it's releasing space, the limitations of how your mind is contained. And then that's where a person starts to realize, the universe is mind substance, and the stickiness of my identity makes me an individual mind in a universal mind substance. And then recognize the infinity underneath that. And these are all releases: release of time, release of space, release of mind itself into infinity. And from there, recognizing that the mind is essentially light, and there's degrees and types of light stuck to the mind, and these various degrees and types of light that are stuck to the mind ultimately generate samsara. Samsara is this process of release and reincarnation. Now, samsara basically is the energy stuck to your mind that makes you reincarnate, and it generates a yearning for release, to be liberated of it. But this generally happens very slowly in people's spiritual development process. It's not a fast reaction, but it's a continuous craving. everybody from a physical level is craving for freedom, physical freedom, emotional freedom, intellectual freedom, mental freedom, spiritual freedom. All these freedoms are a continuous desire that's forming within us and being expressed within us all the time. As we move up the vibrational scale of these cravings of freedom, we're continuously moving closer and closer towards Nibbana, freedom from the self, freedom from the self-identity. Okay, so a little bit of revision on what I just talked about. Ultimately, everything comes back to the word release. When you do your mind map with release in the middle, and how every teaching generates release, and then spiderweb it all together to understand how they interact to form different types of release. Hermetically speaking, we focus on releasing time, then releasing space, and then releasing our attachment to the self of the mind within space to get Akasha and infinity qualities. And then from within that, recognizing that mind is ultimately light, which is only really knowable through that infinity quality, and then releasing attachment to those light bodies, working on the vibrational scale to Nibbana. So the word release is something that you want to contemplate until you attain Nibbana. And if you don't put that in the heart of spiritual practice, to be released of all these things, you can't ascend, you can't move up that vibrational scale. So it's super important to engage all the dharmas through the filter of I'm engaging and practicing and understanding this dharma for release. And that is the fundamental basis through which you'll develop yourself. Okay, so if you have any questions about any of these concepts, let me know. I'm not really going to engage in debate with people because, debating Nibbana is a bit like two Buddhist fleas on a dog arguing about who owns the dog, which represents Nibbana. It's a bit silly. Essentially, we're just looking at how to release to be one in a Nibbanic state. And I can say with 100% conviction that Nibbana existed long before Buddhism ever existed, and what's taught in Buddhism existed in other planetary systems, other constellations, in other civilizations long before the Buddha ever came along, and he was very late to the party. So there's Buddhist civilizations where everybody who's in that civilization attains Nibbana due to the nature of the group consciousness of that civilization. So the whole argument and identity of Buddhists trying to own Buddhism is fundamentally silly and is more of an academic thing than a spiritually intelligent thing. Okay, thanks for your time, and see you on the next video.